Lightning versus the Blue Jackets and the sweep that happened to the team that tied for the best record ever in NHL history. And, just to talk about it, I think Lightning's success is what actually hurt the Lightning the most in this postseason. If you go back and look at the season, I think it was like half the games they've won by 3 goals. So rarely did they ever have to play from behind. And when they took a 2-0 or an 0-2 start of this series, playing from behind, something they haven't done all year long. So does success of a team make it a little bit more difficult in the postseason when they're not used to having to catch up from behind?
Well, I think there's a lot of fatigue, especially when you talk about hockey, when you go multiple years in the playoffs. Obviously, Columbus has never won a playoff series before, which this is huge for them in franchise history. Again, they're setting all kinds of records, and to do it against a team like this, huge shout out to Columbus, and nobody's talking about them. Everyone's talking about Tampa Bay falling down and failing in this series. Nobody's talking about Columbus, how they stepped up to the plate and they absolutely knocked out the juggernaut. Look, I mean, this is a David and Goliath kind of scenario, and David absolutely killed it. All the credit should go to him, but instead we're focusing on Tampa Bay. Going back to what you said, though, I totally agree with you. The expectation was all there. I think they went into this overlooking it. They're like, it's an 8 seed. I'm not worried about it. But Columbus, they came to battle, man. I mean, they were roughing them up. They played physical. They were taking advantage when those shots were given. And honestly, Tampa Bay did not play very well in net. I can't just put it on that. They didn't score very well early. I mean, game 2, they went down like 5-1 or something like that. It was just one of those things where by the time they woke up, Drew, it was already too late.
David, Nate, glad you guys could join us. Nate says, so can we officially call Vegas and San Jose rivals after yesterday's game, man?
I think so, but here's the other thing. With the age of San Jose, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't want to get too far out there.
I was going to say was, dude, when you look at all these series right now, I mean, they are all hard-hitting. They seem like they don't like each other at all series. This is what hockey wants in their playoffs, and they're getting it. I just think that they wanted Tampa Bay to go a little bit further than what they did.
I think they were hoping to, but then again, they're not in the old blood in the NHL. And neither is Columbus. Columbus is not. They're an expansion team as well. And I think when you look at hockey and you look at a lot of hockey fans, they care more about the old blood teams like Toronto, teams like Boston that have been around forever, than they do about these expansion teams. Even Tampa Bay, who's won a Stanley Cup before, they don't care about them in any kind of regard of of teams like Boston, teams like Toronto, teams that have just been around the block. So when you talk about this San Jose series, let me change gears on you really quick. They've got a lot of aging veterans. They've got a lot of guys that may not get too many more chances at this. They're going to battle tooth and nail. Do I think it's necessarily a rivalry with Vegas? I don't think this has anything to do with Vegas. I think this is more just San Jose, like, we cannot afford to bounce out early. I mean, I get it. They were fighting and everything. Vegas managed to beat them 5-0. Drew, I don't know. I look at this series, man. I think Vegas is going to win. I predicted them to win. I thought this could be a 7-game series, though. I think San Jose still has a little bit something left to give. And even if they don't, this might be one of those series where they just beat the Vegas Knights up to the point where they're not able to keep going too much further in the playoffs. Because it is physical.
No, it absolutely is. And Steve says Toronto's going to win it all. Man, they got a long ways to go, but it's a good possibility. And Michael Wilborn says, no offense, but I don't like hockey. I just can't get into it, man. I tell you, I felt that way for a long, long time, man. And then I started watching these playoffs. And, dude, not this year, but, a few years in the past. And it's, dude, if you...
It grows on you, especially if you can go to one of these games, man. The atmosphere.
It's something else, man.
I don't think anybody cares about their sport more than hockey players do. Whether it's football players, baseball players, basketball players. I mean, I don't think anyone takes it quite as personally. Maybe it's because the money isn't the same in that sport, but for whatever reason, hockey players, I don't know how they beat on each other like that for 60 minutes, and at the end of the game, they're like, all's forgotten. I mean, I really just don't understand. I mean, you're knocking teeth out. You're basically killing each other, and they're playing on, like, broken legs or, like, messed up shoulders and everything like that. These guys are warriors.
They are.
And if you give it a chance, man, I don't know. I'm just saying it's a lot better now than it used to be, especially with HD television where you can follow the action a lot better. Again, I think hockey's a great sport. It's one of those sports you just got to give another chance now that the technology's a little bit better.
Nate says, with Kane being ejected and a 10-plus power plays for Vegas, the blood is really bad there, man. You're 100% right. But when I talk about Vegas, talk about a way to start off a franchise. You literally get to pick...
Well, they did make it easy on them. They made it very, very easy on them. But I think they saw at teams like Nashville, teams like Columbus, that when they came into the league, they struggled for years and years and years. And they said, we don't want that, especially when you're talking about Vegas, all the attention it's going to bring. Right. You need to try to build these franchises up from the beginning, and the best way to do that is play winning hockey, Drew. So, yeah, they made it a lot easier on them. That's why they're giving Seattle multiple years before they actually bring them into the fold. That way, they're not just going to go have to take the leftovers from what Vegas got. They're going to give them multiple years. Teams are going to go get that guy that they're not going to be able to protect. And then Seattle's going to have a great team, too. We're going to see them make a good run, too. why don't we move on, though? Why don't we talk, unless you got some comments?
No, Matthew, I'm glad you could join us, man. We had a little bit of issues with our software, so it probably wasn't on your end. It was probably on our end, but I think we're good to go.
Yeah, again, this is strike 3 for us, so I'm not sure what happens if we don't get it right this time. But hopefully, like I said, we changed our software up. Hopefully from today onward, it's going to be a lot smoother. But for right now, let's get back to hockey, Drew. The other series that ended in a sweep, the Islanders, who I didn't think had it in them. I picked the Penguins in 7 because they have an amazing defense, Drew. But honestly, the way they kind of beat a team that's experienced like Pittsburgh and to manage to blow them out and sweep them, both on the road and at home, winning 2 games, fantastic. I mean, Barry Trotz has this team rolling. Are they a legitimate Stanley Cup championship team? Or do you see this as more of a fluke where Pittsburgh wasn't as good?
Both. I mean,
they are.
Can I say both? Because honestly, I think the Islanders are for real. I think that they can make a long stretch into the playoffs. I think that any team that wants to face them doesn't want to face them. But I don't think Pittsburgh is the same team anymore. I mean, does this mean that Crosby might not be the best player in NHL anymore? I'm telling you, I thought he was. But he had a down year this year, and then he couldn't even win a game against the Islanders.
It's collective fatigue, man. I say it all the time with hockey. He's been to the playoffs so many times recently. You're going to have one of these dud years. I think this might be the dud year for Pittsburgh. And then they bounce right back. I mean, goaltending wasn't there this year like it has been in years past. It will be in the future. I still believe in, I'm drawing a blank on his name, their goalie, the young kid that just stepped in last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was, when they made their Stanley Cup run. But I believe in Pittsburgh. They still have the talent. I still think Crosby probably is the best guy. I know there was that Crosby versus Ovechkin thing, and Ovechkin's still in it, but for a long time it was all Crosby. It was all Ovechkin has never won a Stanley Cup. He scores a lot of goals, but doesn't have success in the playoffs. Now that the script's kind of flipped on him, I think Crosby's still in it, though. I don't know if I'm going to say he's the best, but I think he's pretty. He's top 5?
He's held that
top
title.
10?
He's held that title for a while now.
Absolutely.
And you know, he had a down year. Yeah, injuries took a little toll, but he had a down year. And now he didn't even win a playoff game. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. Steve says Pittsburgh is not as good as they used to be.
And that is true. I don't think they have the depth that they used to. They are missing some players, some goal scorers and everything. And we kind of saw that where Crosby could not carry the load this year by himself, either in the playoffs or the regular season. They kind of limped into the playoffs. And the Islanders, to their credit, took care of them. They play the stingiest defense in the NHL. I feel like they're going to continue to do that in the playoffs, too.
Yep, I agree. Will says maybe the Predators, that's my second pick. And Rich says Nashville is always a solid pick.
I'd love to agree with you. As a Predators fan? Yeah, as a Predators fan, I'd love to agree with you there. But I don't know, watching this Dallas Stars set, this is a team they should be dominating, and they just have not been able to do it. I know Dallas has a good defense.
If you watch that game...
You talk about teams coming in flat.
You watch that game, the last game, and you watch that first period, and you watch Dallas Stars dominate offensively in that period, and it didn't really take until the second period where Nashville got those 2 scores. We're like, okay, finally.
I mean, it's taking a guy like Rocco Grimaldi, a guy who shouldn't be on our 4th line, to spark this team. Something's going on with it. There's talk about Laviolette, their coach, that he's a 5-year guy, that by the time that 5th year rolls around, the team gets tired of hearing his message. They get tired of listening to him, and then he moves on somewhere else. This is his 5th year in Nashville. I wonder if we're starting to see some of that, because guys like Forsberg, guys like Arvidsson, for the Predators, have not been as good as... Not as advertised, but they haven't been as good. They're not living up to their potential right now. These are better players that, for whatever reason, don't seem to be terribly motivated.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So I like Nashville. If they get it together and they start firing on all cylinders, I will agree with you. They can win the Stanley Cup. But they have to play either the Blues or the Jets in the next round. We're going to talk about that series here. That's some tough sledding. Those are some tough teams, man.
Steve says, nah, Will, it's Toronto's time now. Man,
if they finish off Boston, I think they might be my favorite in the East. I like the Islanders too, but
it could be a Predators Maple Leafs Stanley Cup. It honestly could.
I hope not. If they're the last Canadian team, they're going to get every call under the sun. But you never know.
And Will says that he promoted us, and this is his boy Rich, man. I appreciate it so much. Will, we appreciate all the love you give us, and Rich, thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, man. Yeah, thanks for joining the talk. We're always glad to have you in here. Don't be shy, everyone in the comments. Make sure you make your voice heard, because we want this to be everybody's show, not just our opinion. We kind of want to share, and we want to hear what you're thinking too.
Absolutely.
All right, Drew, let's move on and talk about that Jets and Blues series. The Blues have been one of the hottest teams in hockey right now. Going into this series, I thought this was going to be a clean sweep. Not a clean sweep. I'm sorry. I thought this was going to be one of the best series going into this because Winnipeg is an amazing team. The Blues are incredibly hot.
this is actually my series to watch now because I kind of downplayed it as you upplayed it, and I said I just don't know if the Blues can handle a team like the Jets, even though they're hot. And I was absolutely, completely wrong. I think it was Steve that was talking about. Steve's talking about the rivalry between Vegas and San Jose. Man, this is one. The Jets versus the Blues, dude. The way that these guys are hitting each other, the way that they're
and they're both huge teams. I mean, their defenders are absolute giants.
But you got to give it to the one guy that's literally making the difference on the Blue, and that's Jordan Binnington. I mean, that goalie is just out of nowhere. I mean, this guy's great. Yeah, he kind of got beat up a little bit in Game 3, but he'll do a quick turnaround.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think if you look at the Blues, the way they started this year, they did exactly what the Predators did a couple years ago when they were the 8th seed and managed to get to the Stanley Cup, which is they just got hot at the right moment. They got hot in that second half of the season, man, and they ran away with it. I think Winnipeg is just really, really unfortunate to have drawn them in the first round because these teams should both honestly probably be second to third round teams at the very least.
Right.
And unfortunately, one of them's got to go home. And this just breaks my heart as a Predators fan. And, of course, the Preds play the winner of this series if they make it through. So doesn't necessarily break my heart they're beating each other up. I hope this goes to 7 games. And it could. It definitely could. I think they're at 2-1 right now. Let me check. Yes. No, 2-2. Oh. They're tied at 2 now. They just played last night.
That's right.
So Winnipeg, I still think, is probably going to get edged out by the Jets. I had this one going in 7. Are you going to stick with that? Or what's your direction here? I'm going to stick with that. I think the Blues still win this in 7.
I told you to begin with, and I can't take my word back. I thought the Jets would take this series. I thought they'd take it in 5, and I was obviously completely wrong. And
well, that's okay. I picked Tampa to sweep,
and
so
I'm eating my words.
Be more wrong
and
about
now,
that.
to be honest with you, I think Jordan Binnington's the difference, and I think the Blues are going to beat the Jets.
How you doing, Adam? Good to see you, man, in here. And then Will said Jake's opinion is hate in Uncle Drew.
Hashtag Uncle
was I
Drew.
hating you? Was I hating you?
He probably did. It was probably.
I don't think I started.
It was underline hate. It was underline. You couldn't.
It's subliminal.
Yeah.
And then Will says, "Let's talk about Blackhawk hockey." Well, we can't do that because unfortunately they did not make it. They got some rebuilding.
They're doing
to do.
exactly what we're doing, and that's sitting on their butts
and watching it. Let's talk about the Predators series next, Drew, because I want to talk about them.
Yeah, real quick. Chris says he has the Jets winning in 6.
I don't know, man. They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to get it in gear. They are.
They're coming back.
They are, but they're gonna have to get it in gear, man. I think St. Louis, the way they've been playing, they're still gonna be too good. It was still only 2-1 last night. I think the Jets are in for a dogfight here. I think either one of these teams is gonna have trouble in the next round because this one's gonna be incredibly physical, incredibly tough. It's an emotional win, and usually when you have those emotional wins, it's tough to keep up your intensity for the next round. So we'll see what happens. I think I like this. I like the Blues, and I think I like them in 7, but. Maybe this is me picking an underdog for once. I don't know. Let's move on and talk about the Predators. What do you say?
Let's do it.
If you look at the Predators, they've been flat. There's been one guy on this team that's actually been any good, and it's Rocco Grimaldi, who's probably a minor leaguer. They called him up right before these playoffs. I think it was Brian Boyle losing his appendix that actually landed him a spot in Game 2. And they've been much better with him. He's been the generator on offense. The defense has played really well. These games have all been incredibly low scoring. It's been, as much of a dogfight as Nashville ever gets into. They're not a physical team.
Struggle.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Pekka Rinne is finally playing well in the playoffs. He's been incredibly inconsistent this year. If you don't know, Preds goalie Pekka Rinne, former great, now just so-so, great at times, terrible at times. It's going to come down to how much can Pekka Rinne hold out because Dallas does not score the puck, but he is prone to making boneheaded kind of plays and letting easy shots into the net, especially late in games as he gets older and tireder. I just don't know that they have it in them. I think I'm still going to go Nashville. It's going to be 6 or 7 instead of the 5 I was hoping for beforehand. I'm going to say Nashville gets out of this, and then they get to go play whatever buzzsaw comes out of that Winnipeg and St. Louis group.
Oh, man.
So I'm hoping that one goes to 6.
I still got the Predators winning this game. Is it 6 or it's 7? I think it's going to go to a long series for no doubt about that. Rich, there is a lot of love for Pekka Rinne, and you got to remember this.
I hope he plays great.
This guy has been
He's very good.
has been around for a long time.
Exactly.
I think 2002, 2003.
I think it was 2000 they brought him.
I mean, you're talking about a guy that's been around for the league a long time. My question is, what are they doing after he decides to retire? Because even though they didn't win all these games, I think were they 2-1? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's 2-1 right now.
So because they're playing tonight. I mean, this guy is literally playing out of his mind.
He is.
I mean, he's doing great glove saves. He is literally the reason why the Dallas Stars are not 3-0 in this season because you can you cannot give it to the Nashville offensive. It's struggling, and you're absolutely right. Maybe one player makes a difference and adds a little bit of fire to this offense.
Well, especially when it's your goalie. I mean, when your goalie is that guy who steps up.
I was talking about Rock.
I got you.
But, yeah.
And maybe he gives the spark, but when your goalie steps up to the plate like Pekka has these past couple games, you can shut the team down like Dallas, especially one that's not very offensive. The question is going to be, can he keep it up? I hope he does.
Yeah.
But in the past, we've seen him have a couple good games, and then he goes back to making mistakes. And I don't know if it's fatigue, because he is 35 or 36 these days. I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know if it's something else. You know, you're not going to see UC Saros' backup, who's almost as good as he is, because it's the playoffs. They want to go with the man.
Yeah.
So you're probably not going to see him unless he gets like dominated, like a 5 or 6 goal game.
He's good, but he's not as big.
The question is going to be, can Pekka keep it up for the Predators? If he does, I think they're going to win an ugly series. Don't ask me what happens next round, but I think Pekka wins an ugly series if he keeps playing really well.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on and let's talk about the Bruins and the Maple Leafs next. Obviously, the Maple Leafs are the sexy pick, I think. A lot of teams love that first line with Marner, Tavares, and Austin Matthews on it, and how could you not? I mean, they've got 3 of the best players in the NHL on that line. I worry about the depth, especially with Kadri suspended. I wonder what's going to actually happen. It's tied at 2 right now, and they're in the second. I'm looking at this series, Drew. It can go either way, man. I picked Boston in 7. I think. Maybe I said 6. I'd still pick Boston. I'm still going to stick with Boston because I don't know if I believe in Toronto enough. I don't know if I believe in the defense and the goaltending. And usually that's what I like to lean on towards in hockey. I like scoring teams, but usually it's the defense that ultimately wins championships. You got to at least be able to play well in net if it's going to happen. I just don't know if they have that going on this year. And this may not be their year, but with that young core of Marner, Tavares, and Matthews on that first line, man, if you can add a couple pieces, this team is going to be dangerous.
No doubt about it.
And by a couple pieces, I mean get better at goalie.
To get some of these comments out, just want to knock it out. Chris says Preds in 5 because of Peke. Steve says breaking news: Bills and Cowboys Thanksgiving Day. I don't know. It's always Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day.
The Bills get to play them on Thanksgiving Day. Remember, Steve's a Bills fan.
I know, but are you excited? I guess that gives you something to do on Thanksgiving besides eat and sleep. I mean,
that's a tough draw, though. I wouldn't want to play the Cowboys, but I guess if you're going to, I don't know. Do you want to play them on a Thursday?
Hey, every team has to do it. It is just what it is. Will says leaves, and Chris says leaves. Chris says in 7, and Will says in 6, and Steve says in 5 with the Leafs. I got to get to the Leafs too, man. I think that they're the more solid team than Boston is.
It's not possible to win in 5. The series is tied at 2. Is it? Or no, it's 2-1. I'm sorry. If they do win tonight and they win tomorrow, they can. But Boston has kind of upset that a little bit. They just scored again. It's 3-2 Boston. So it looks like that 5 is getting a little harder to believe. I don't know. We'll see. But maybe they win today. Maybe they win a couple days from now, and we're talking about Toronto moving through early and getting that rest, because that's a big part of the playoffs nobody talks about, is if you can finish these series early and the team you're playing against runs late, you get an extra couple days to rest up. That's
Absolutely.
Huge. So I'm staying Boston. That's just me, but I don't know. I like the Leafs. I wouldn't be shocked if they get out of this round.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Shay, I'm glad you could join us. I'm glad you hate my turtle. He will always be there for you. Rich says, I'm totally fine with the Canadian team winning the Cup for the first time in almost 3 decades.
I know, it's crazy. You look at Toronto, it's even longer than that. I mean, it's been a drought up there in Canada, and everyone says it's a Canadian sport. I guess America's just been running it for the past 30 years.
And Eddie is calling us out. He says, I believe both you said my Jackets wouldn't stand a chance.
I did. Okay, Eddie, let me go on the record here. I said this was going to be a sweep for the Lightning. And you know what? All the way through Game 3, I'm like, okay, when are the Lightning coming back? But it took... I think it was when it was 3-1 last night. I was like, oh crap, this isn't happening. So the Lightning are out. So props to you, man. I'm glad to see it. Again, all credit to them. Everyone's talking about how the Lightning choked. Nobody's talking about Columbus stepped up to the plate and just took them down. And that I do think it's a mix of both. But again, I don't think Columbus is getting the credit it needs for the series they just played. It's never happened in history before.
Eddie, we're glad that you could join us. We're glad that you could tell us we were wrong, man. You did miss it. But, hey, it's always on Facebook. You can rewatch it again, and you can watch us eat our words over and over as much as you'd like.
Absolutely. Charo says, go Jazz. Yep. We're going to talk basketball here in a second, and I guess we're going to have to hustle a little bit because we're still doing a mock draft tonight too, Drew.
Or we hold basketball till Friday.
Well, we can wait on basketball. I think, unfortunately, that'll let those series get a little bit deeper. Unfortunately, I think we are going to push basketball to Friday.
I think it sounds right.
Just to balance things out a little bit. Let's round out hockey, though. Let's talk Flames and Avalanche here. What do you say?
Let's do it. Another series that I am deeply embedded in. If all you guys all know, I'm from Colorado. I absolutely love the Avalanche. Of course, when I loved them, they were actually really, really good. And now they're kind of coming back. I mean, talk about a young team with some really great talent in it that honestly is playing one of the better teams in the NHL.
Absolutely. Their top line is amazing. Ristolainen, they've got McKinnon as well. They've got great guys on that first line. I didn't think they had the depth. I really thought the Flames were going to be able to dominate this one, especially signing a guy like James Neal in the offseason this year. But you look at the way they've played, the Flames have absolutely not shown up. For a 1 seed to play like this against an 8, I mean, I look at this, Drew, and I'm like, Colorado can win this series if this continues. I mean, they're up 2-1 already. Yeah. The way it's going, they've got another home game too, and then you're going to get a third one at home if they win tomorrow, and then tonight, late tonight, and then they win that extra game at home. We're going to see Colorado move through. I didn't think they had it in them, but again, this is just another upset for this postseason for me.
Absolutely. Steve says, go Predators, and Will says the Flames are going to win this. And I do want to say something, guys. Have anyone noticed how late these games are? And has anyone else noticed how long these intermissions are, too? I mean, are they trying to make it drag out so much longer?
Well, you got to do the ice, man. You know how it is.
It doesn't take that long to do the ice.
It's like halftime. I mean, but then you have two of them. So, yeah. I agree with you, but hockey's got to enjoy its time in the limelight. I don't really have a problem with the intermissions.
It's really more the late start that really drives me nuts.
And that's true, but they've got a lot going on. They got multiple games going today, and you don't want to stack 2 on top of each other, so I understand.
People got to work in the morning.
Yeah, but you'll miss it for hockey if you're a big enough fan.
Well, that's what I've been doing.
I know.
Why do you think my boss called me?
That explains the bags under his eyes. All right, Drew, we got one more series, and then we'll move on to the NFL.
Makeup.
Carolina versus the Capitals. I look at this series, man. 2-1 Washington. I didn't think, again, this one would be terribly close. I thought the Caps would win this one. I believe I said 6. I might have said 5. But the biggest story I've got is Ovechkin just absolutely blasting that kid. I mean, 19-year-old just took him off his skates, put him in concussion protocol. As much as I don't want to make the series about that, we need to at least talk about it here. Does it go too far in the NHL, or is it right where it needs to be?
No, it's totally helped their viewership go up. I think it's the right where it's supposed to be. The question is, you're 19 years old, kid. Don't mess with Alec Ovechkin. It's pretty easy to understand that you don't mess with Alec. Plain and simple.
And he doesn't fight. He's a guy who doesn't fight. I mean, but he's one of those.
Not a little guy either.
Well, no, he's not. But I was also kind of expecting one of the defenders to take that fight. But the kid was sitting there saying, "Hey, do you want to go for it?" And Ovechkin was like, "All right." And then I guess he proved to him it was a mistake. I think. Look, this is one of those games. This is one of those kind of moments where, yes, he fell. He hit his head on the ice. He got a concussion. It's a scary moment. It's one of those things, but it's also kind of a freak thing that happens. I'm not necessarily concerned about it. Everyone's sitting there saying they need to take fighting out of hockey.
No.
It's part of the sport.
Yep.
It is part of the sport. If you don't like, next thing you know, they're going to be saying they need to take fighting out of UFC. So, look, if you play hockey, things are going to get chippy. You're going to be fighting. Rarely is it one guy literally just hitting another guy who's not ready for it. Usually both of the guys throw the gloves off and go at it, so you know what you're getting into. All I got to say is toughen up. And yeah, it's terrible for this kid. I hate that he had the injury. I think a lot of it came from him hitting his head on the ice. But going forward, this does not mean the NHL needs to sit there and change their fighting rules or anything like that. It's part of the sport. Get used to it. That's all I can say.
Will says he's got the Canes winning that series. Man, you are not picking underdogs during this, man. You're picking those top seeds.
He just took the Flames too, so yeah.
I don't. You don't get that title no more, man. You don't get it.
That's okay though. I think the Capitals are going to pull this one out, man. I think they're going to be just fine. I think they've got a lot of star power and everything. I think they are going to manage to pull through. I don't know what that is behind us, but I think the Capitals are going to be fine.
JP says fighting gives the game an edge that other sports don't have. Dude, you're absolutely right. You're actually 100% right. It kind of adds that little, is it going to happen right now? These guys, and it's so exciting when it happens. I know it sounds so dumb because they just box each other for a little bit, but it really does.
You enjoy it, and these guys are hitting each other into the boards and everything. There's going to be bad blood between them. You need a way to express that a little bit. It's not like basketball where you're not allowed to touch anyone. It's not like baseball where there's like almost no contact at all. This is a contact sport, so guys are going to need to express them. It's going to happen anyway. You can't sit there and say, well, we're going to get somebody suspended because they fought, because that dude just busted my teeth slamming me into the glass. I mean, you just can't. It's going to happen. You just can't sit there and tell me you're going to take it all the way out of the game.
Rich says, just a hunch, but the Hurricanes will flame out just like the AAF. And if you guys don't know, they did file for bankruptcy. So
and their owner was in charge of it. Dundon, owns the Hurricanes as well. That's what he's famous for.
What a shame.
I agree with you. I think the Hurricanes are probably not long for the playoffs, but you never know. I'm still going to stay Washington in 6. I think they're the better team. They've got the better goalie in Holtby. I think as long as he gets everything going, I think the Capitals should win this one.
And Bees, glad you could join us on the show, man. He said the kid's brother is going to revenge against Ovechkin, and he said baseball has fighting too.
It does, but baseball, number one, is a non-contact sport. The only thing you get in baseball, and this is over basketball, is the beanballs, where you go peg somebody with an 80 or 90 mile an hour fastball.
But,
yeah, and you say there's fighting in baseball, but it isn't like hockey. Hockey, you're actually throwing punches. Baseball, usually they just hug each other and yell and look tough, unless you're Yasiel Puig. Then he's going to run out there and throw haymakers and stuff. Most guys usually don't fight in baseball. They get out there and they scream at each other. They say it's a fight, but it's really more of a shove. It's like a high school fight,
Shay, your threats are meaningless, man. That turtle's untouchable. It'll never happen.
Yeah, Drew's here to protect it. All right, Drew. We've talked hockey, man.
We did it.
We've avoided the criticism for today that we only talk NFL, but we're going to go back and talk NFL anyway.
And guys, if you're wanting to talk NBA, catch us on Friday night. We will be talking about that. We'll leave NHL out unless something crazy happens.
And we'll let those series go a little bit deeper. That way we get a better understanding of how things are going. Because, yes, Golden State lost to the Clippers, and they lost one game where they gave up, a 31-point lead. But is that going to reflect over the overall series? Probably not. I think Golden State's going to be just fine, but you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One last comment in hockey, and then we'll move on to NHL. Eddie says, if people think fighting is bad now, they need to watch some of the games between the Wings and the Avalanches in the late 90s and early 2000s. Man, that's what made me fall in love with hockey, is those series and the Avs and the Wings going against each other over and over. He said that would have those people curled up in a corner asking for their mommies.
Oh, I agree. I mean, if that happened today, I can only imagine what the sports media would be talking about. They'd be talking about, like, we need to shut hockey down. We can't have this kind of... Look, man, don't try to sissify a sport that's doing just fine. Again, it draws people to it. If some people go to watch the fights, it brings viewership to hockey, which is still only the fourth major sport in America right now. I have no problem with it. It's, again, as long as it's understood that all these players are going into this saying there's going to be fights, I may lose teeth, I may get hit in the face. As long as you know what you're stepping into and you still choose to do it, I have no problem with them allowing it.
Will says, can we talk baseball ever? We will,
Baseball's tough. I mean, again...
We will, man. I promise.
It's early. It's early. We've got a lot of time.
What is there to talk about right now? You gonna talk about how my Yankees shut out the Red Sox yesterday?
We talk about how the Cubs are coming from 1-8 to, close to 500 now.
Yeah.
They're on a bit of a winning streak, but when we get to September and October, is any of this news going to matter too much?
That's kind of
Short of somebody absolutely getting hurt, probably not. So we're going to avoid baseball for now, but we will talk about it going forward. We're going to talk about football, though, because we got a draft coming up in 8 days, and we have to figure out, Drew, who's going to the back end of this first round.
Right, and I just want to remind all you guys out there that we will be at the draft. We'll be live. If you guys are there, by all means, hit us up, catch us up. Let's grab a beer, and let's enjoy the show. But remember to catch us live during the draft.
And if you did miss our last show, we already did picks 1 through 16. If you want to go back and rewatch it, it's episode 134, where we probably talked about your team if your team didn't have a great finish this year.
Absolutely.
But this time, we're talking about some of the better teams in the NFL. We're going to go from 17... through 32.
We don't start with one of the better teams.
Well, I'm just glad. Well, yeah, as you go down the list, progressively gets better. That's how the draft works, Drew.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just glad both of our teams are on this end of the back nine. Let's talk about not the Panthers. We talked about them last time. Let's talk about the Giants. As you know, they got this pick 17 from the Cleveland Browns, and it only cost them Odell Beckham. I think we all agree the Giants made a great move there, didn't they?
So they're taking Odell Beckham Jr.
I don't know what they're going to do.
Oh.
But whatever it is, it better be pretty good because you gave up a pretty talented receiver for this pick. I'm going to let you start. Go ahead. If you're the Giants, for your draft, who did they take at number 6?
You're excited about this pick because at number 17, you're looking for anyone that's going to be filling any kind of hole on your defense because that's what you need the most help on. You're going to look at Ed Oliver, defensive lineman, Houston. I mean, you're talking about a rebuild completely on this defense. He's going to fit perfectly fine next to, in my mock draft, where they took Montez Sweat earlier in this. Talk about Oliver. He's an athletic freak. He's a steal in the middle of the first round. This guy is projected all up in the first 10 picks, if not higher than that. But there's just so much talent, so much need around other positions that someone like Ed Oliver falls down to number 17 in my mock draft.
Well, I know everyone says I criticize you too much, Drew, but I love this pick. If they get anyone on the defensive line at 17 that can make an impact like Ed Oliver can. Remember, last year he kind of had a bit of a down year as a senior, but before that we were talking about this could be the next Aaron Donald. He obviously is very talented. He's coming out of Houston. He's one of those defensive linemen that has some of the most upside out of anyone in this draft. I would love this pick if they wind up picking him at 17. I don't have him quite going off my board yet, but I love this pick for the Giants. I'm going a different direction, though. I already have Dwayne Haskins off the board, which is, in my opinion, still their biggest need is at quarterback. There's rumors now that they might pass on it. They might just roll with Eli Manning, but if it's me, look, I'm still going to say they take the quarterback at 6 if he's there. Instead, at 17, I have them taking Rashawn Gary, who you had going incredibly high in the draft. I think this is a better place for Rashawn Gary, a guy that, again, has all the athleticism in the world. He may not be the fastest edge rusher you want to see, but he didn't have the same level of production as some of these other guys in college. I wonder if he's not quite going to translate as well in the NFL. That's why I see him falling a little bit, because he didn't put up the huge numbers everyone expected him to at Michigan.
And I don't hate this pick either. If he falls somewhere down there, that's going to happen. But you keep saying he's not as fast. He still put one of the higher 40 times as a defensive lineman in this combine. Maybe he doesn't play at that speed in pads, but the fact is he's capable of doing it. Maybe that's where I see someone like in my mock draft where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go ahead and took a reach and to try to find the next edge rusher that fits great into their system. And again, they love big guys in their defensive line. Will, man, you are going to be coming to Nashville. We are going to get together and drink, man. You got to just let us know when that happens. You can obviously message us later.
Absolutely. We've talked about that. Rich also said ESPN is interviewing a guy that's going to all 30 ballparks in 30 days. Again, Drew and I would love to do that. I mean, it would be great to go do remotes, especially in the summer where things kind of quiet down a little bit. We'd love to do something along those lines, but, who knows? Maybe when we're as big as ESPN, we'll get around to it.
Maybe. Yeah. Shay, who says I'm not drunk? Quit trying to decide what I am. All right?
And B says he's going to be watching us during the draft next week. Man, we can't wait either. It's going to be great. I love that it's coming to Nashville. They said there's going to be 100,000 people, so we're not 100% sure what it's going to look like. But it's going to be live, and we'll be there. So look forward to that.
All right, guys. At number 18 pick, we had the Vikings coming up to get ready to pick. I mean, this to me was not much of a head scratcher. What's the most important thing to do for the Vikings for next year? That's keep Kirk Cousins upright.
Also, Shay says he thinks we both need a Saints hat. Look, man, you send it to us. We'll put it on the bar. Again, if you guys have any merchandise you want to.
I won't wear that junk, but I'll put it on the bar.
If you guys have anything you want to send us, feel free. Hit us up, send us a message, and we'll talk about it. Going back to this pick, though, go ahead. They got to protect Kirk Cousins.
They absolutely got to protect Cousins because if you like it or not, as a Vikings fan, you got him for the next couple of years at a really high price. But to keep him upright, I see them taking Cody Ford, offensive lineman out of Oklahoma.
And I love the offensive line pick. I don't love that pick particularly because I see Cody Ford as more of a run-blocking guy, and maybe the Vikings go back that direction if they do.
They need to.
He's great, and he can also shift into guard, which is fantastic. That's what they need.
They just need a guy to play somewhere on that offensive
Exactly.
line.
I think everybody agrees that guard is still their biggest need position. I think if you shifted Cody Ford in, it'd be a great pick for them. But I think they're going to go in a different direction because, like you said, they need to protect Kirk Cousins. And with that, they're going to take Andre Dillard, who's one of the best pass-blocking linemen out of this draft. They're going to play him at left tackle, and they're going to move Riley Reif inside to guard to help make this line better at pass blocking. I think when you look at the Vikings, they need to be a pass-heavy team with the receivers they have and everything. With Kirk Cousins as quarterback making $27.5 million a year, I think they're going to go Andre Dillard instead because he's the better pass blocker. And I wouldn't fault him for Ford, though, either.
And I'll give you that. I understand exactly what you're getting at, but here it is. What did they struggle doing offensively? Running the ball.
Protecting Kirk Cousins, too.
But
everything, Drew. Everything. They struggled.
But luckily for him, he has great receivers and a great tight end. So if he can just get that ball out quick, and let's not get it wrong, Cody Ford can pass protect. And this is something that he can learn. And when I said offensive lineman, I didn't say offensive tackle. I absolutely think that they should move him inside. But if they don't, so be it. But the thing is here, they got to run the ball so that they can throw it. Because if you're constantly throwing the ball, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't have a run game.
And it's the easiest way to make your quarterback's life easier is to establish the run. I think they've spent a big pick on a running back here recently as well. So, I don't know. Latavius Murray is gone, but they're going to be just fine at running back. I think when you look at the Vikings, again, they could go either direction here. I like Cody Ford as a player. I just don't see them going the run blocker first. Maybe they do, but I'm going to go another direction and go with Andre Dillard out of Washington State. Let's move forward, though. Let's talk about a team everybody cares about, the Tennessee Titans.
No, we're going to hold off. We've got a comment that's way more important than the Titans pick. Jimmy says, my dad started going away to Packers games in 1992 and seen every stadium, mostly Packer games, but some other teams along the way mark stadiums off just to see new ones from the ones like 5 years. Man, Jimmy, if I could be your dad and see all those games, I would be ecstatic. Unfortunately, I've only been to 3 NFL stadiums my whole life.
I think I've been to 4. I've been to Atlanta, the Titans, Cleveland, and Buffalo. So
Denver, Kansas City, and Nashville.
Yeah, and let's both agree, Nashville Stadium, not the best one around, but
it's
not
the
bad.
worst.
It's not okay. It's not the best one around, but it's not the worst either. JP also says the Vikings don't need a guard because they have the greatest of all time, Josh Klein. If you don't know, Josh Klein, former Titan, was pretty terrible as soon as he got a paycheck last year. Might have been one of the worst guards in the NFL as well, so the Vikings bring him on. I'm not going to say it's an answer, but JP, let me just say this. They needed 2 guards, okay? And they only addressed 1. Even if Josh Klein goes back to playing like he's halfway decent like he did 2 years ago for the Titans, they still need another guy. So I don't hate the Cody Ford pick. I think they're more likely to move Riley Reif inside because I think he'd be a better guard and go draft a pure left tackle, a guy that can protect Kirk Cousins' blind side for years to come. But they might go your direction. I don't know that Andre Dillard sticks around this long because I think, he's the best pass blocker, and teams tend to value pass blocking left tackles pretty highly. All right, Drew, why don't we move forward here? I think some people, Shay says the Titans will have an interesting draft. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's always interesting with John Robinson calling all these picks. I think they're going Ed Oliver. This is my pick here. Obviously, you had him going a couple picks forward, so you got something different, but I think they're going to go with the best available pass rushing guy, whether he's a D lineman, whether he's going to play the defensive end in a 34, whether they're going to need an outside linebacker. I think it just depends on who's going to be around. I think that's their first pick, though. Right now, they have 37-year-old Cameron Wake. They have Kamale Correa, who's not terribly great from the Ravens. They have Sharif Finch, who's nobody's ever heard of if you're not from Nashville. And they also have Harold Landry, who was okay, but needs to step into a role, and we don't know that he's going to step up at the level they want him to. So I think they're going to go with another high-dollar impact player on the defensive line or outside linebacker. I think it's Ed Oliver if this is that last guy there.
And I absolutely love that pick if he would have landed there at number 19, but he was taken too early. But I do think they're going to focus on that defensive line. But they're going to go Ed Rusher out of Clemson.
Cleveland Farrell. How many times do I have to say this?
It's a weird name, okay? Cleveland Farrell. But this guy, there's no doubt about it, they're going to be taking him. After Brian Rakpo retired, they are missing that edge rusher at the end. They're missing him. And don't get me wrong, this guy wasn't anything near when he first got there, but the fact that he stayed there for so long and now he's gone, they need to replace this guy. Farrell is explosive off the line with a really high motor. He's going to fit that defense right away and where that they're wanting to be. If it's a must to put somewhere on this defensive line. If it's Ed Oliver, I don't blame him. If it's Farrell, it's the way to go.
Shay says the Titans are going to draft a tight end. And let me tell you, Shay, if Hawkinson falls to this pick, I think they're really going to consider it. But short of him, I don't think they're going to reach on Noah Fant here. I know they have Delaney Walker coming back from an ankle injury. He's still a good tight end. They still believe in him because he didn't have a lot of wear and tear on him early at San Fran. I don't think they're going tight end here unless it's Hawkinson. If they go there, they might just take him because they see him as the best available player. But for right now, we have about 14 different tight ends on the Titans who might be okay eventually. Guys like Michael Pruitt, guys like Ferkser, and also we drafted a 4th-round tight end in, what's his name that I can't think of. That's terrible, but hey, they believe in him.
That's your team.
Exactly. I can't think of his name. We have multiple tight ends. Don't worry about that. They have 3 or 4 guys that I think are going to step up to the plate here. But I don't think they're going tight end unless they get a home run value at this pick. A guy like Hawkinson, who everyone agrees is the best tight end, if he falls this far,
pump the brakes.
You're going to take Noah Fant over T.J. Hawkinson?
No, I think T.J. Hawkinson's going to be taken first, but Noah Fant, I think, has more of a possibility of having a higher ceiling.
Well, I'm saying right now, I think Hawkinson is the agreed upon number 1 guy.
Well, he's going,
Right. So regardless of what we think, I think everyone thinks Hawkinson's the best one in this class. Unless he falls to them, the Titans aren't going to take a tight end. They're not going to take a receiver either because they just spent on free agency. They've spent a lot of picks on these guys. They're going to see what happens. They need defensive linemen. With Derek Morgan and Brian Orakpo gone after last year, after having a terrible year from both of them, they need guys that are going to help on this defensive line because Jarrell Casey went out week 17, and then they lost a win and get in. If he had played, there might have been a chance the Colts don't even make the playoffs.
Are we still talking the Titans?
We are. I mean, we're going to keep going. That's okay, though, Drew. You're right. It's time to move on.
No, I'm messing with you. John, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us. Definitely Papa Top, no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Shay also says, what about a wide receiver? You guys need one. Let's not even get him in him. Let's not do it.
I don't know if they do. Again, I think they believe in the depth at wide receiver because they have Corey Davis, who Drew thinks is a 3rd-round pick. He's wrong, but that's what he thinks. They have Taywan Taylor. They still have Adam Humphries. They just paid to bring in as well. I don't think they see it as much of a need as defensive line or defensive edge.
They'll take one later in the draft, but they won't take one early.
Exactly. They need defensive line, whether it's interior or outside linebacker. Basically, a 34 is basically a 5'2", if that's how you want to look at it. So they need somebody who's going to play on the defensive line, and then they need an offensive guard. They lost Quentin Spain and Josh Klein, both of their starting offensive guards last year. This could be a guard pick, but I think they're going defensive line first.
Jeremy, I'm glad you could join us, man. He says, buds for you all. I hope we're talking about the can buds.
Either way, I hope you're having a good time, Jeremy. Will also says the Titans overpaid for Humphreys. Well, you're just mad your team couldn't sign him, Will. That's all I got to say. You're just jealous. Let's move forward, though, Drew, because we don't want to talk about the Titans all day. Let's talk about the Steelers.
Let's do it, man. At number 20 pick, the Steelers are looking to help their secondary, and they like to play a lot of coverage, and they're going to get a lot of zone coverage, and they're going to get the best zone coverage corner out there, and that's Brian Murphy, cornerback, Washington.
Byron Murphy, but yes, I have the same
What
pick.
did I say?
You said Brian, but that's okay.
It's Byron.
I have the exact same pick, and I think you're right. He's the best pure zone coverage guy. I think, in my opinion, the best cornerback in this draft, a guy who can play man and zone.
Considered by many to be the best.
No, not Byron Murphy. I'm going a different direction. I think the best guy is DeAndre Baker. But I think teams, when it comes to scheme fit, when it comes to scheme fit, I think they're going to look at it and say, this guy plays really good zone. I think the Lions are going to say they need a cornerback who can play man-to-man, so they have Greedy Williams. So I'm in agreement with you that DeAndre Baker probably will be the third one off the board. I think he's the most talented, though. In my opinion, I think a guy who plays man, who plays zone, who has a history of generating turnovers at Georgia like DeAndre Baker does, I think he should be the pick, but I agree with you. I think they're going to go with the zone coverage player in Byron Murphy, who I'm not going to say he's a bum. He's really, really good himself. He might have the smoothest hips in this draft. I just think they should probably go a different direction and go DeAndre Baker. But I agree with you. They're going Byron Murphy.
Yeah, we'll get into DeAndre Baker later on. But
okay, Will, so I say something bad about Tampa and the hate is bad with me. All right, whatever, man. He's also saying he hopes Josh Allen falls to number 5 in Tampa Bay. I think that's the dream scenario, but I don't think it's going to happen. Again, I think there's 3 clear-cut guys on the defensive line, Quinnen Williams, Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, and then you have Kyler Murray, who's probably going number 1 overall. I think Tampa Bay is going to be that team left holding the bag where they don't have that clear-cut answer of who they need to take, right?
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. Either way, back to what I had to say. They're going to be taking Murphy to the corner out of Washington. With the add of Steven Nelson into that secondary, the Steelers are still looking for answers. They got to find a corner, regardless if it's anybody out of the corner. They're going to be taking a corner at this pick. They have to.
And Shay's also saying fill in Shazier's old spot. Look, I'd love it if one of the Devons fall to this pick, but we kind of agree there are 2 great linebackers here, Devin White and Devin Bush, and we both have them off the board at this point. We have, I think, Cincinnati, and I have one going to the Buccaneers. I'm not sure what you have, but that's okay. We both have both of these top-level linebackers, the elite guys, off the board when the Steelers pick at 20. So we don't see them reaching for a linebacker. I think they're going to go address another need where you can still get an elite player like a Byron Murphy, like a DeAndre Baker.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Corner's going to be their pick. They have to. Their secondary was what is hurting them the most defensively. Unless they go a wide receiver here, which I think it's it's a huge stretch if they pick a wide receiver at this pick when there's so much need defensively.
Jeremy also says that if the Bears make the playoffs, you guys think they can make a legit run at the Super Bowl? I think they could have this year. They have the defense. Mitch Trubisky's starting to progress a little bit. They have a quarterback who's incredibly cheap, and they don't have to worry about for the next 3 years. The Bears are a playoff contender, especially unless the Vikings figure out what they're doing. If the Vikings can get back to where they were 2 years ago, it's going to be a slugfest in the NFC North. If not, I don't see the Packers turning around overnight. They still need a lot. Unless they do really well in this draft, I think the Packers are going to be out of it. The Bears are absolutely a Super Bowl contender, and I don't think anyone can sit there and say they're not at this point, right? I mean, if they make a field goal, who knows how that turns out?
You're right. To be honest with you, man, I think the only worry
You just saw the thing about me checking out hips, didn't you?
Yeah, that's why I laughed. The only thing that I worry about the Bears is their run game. They got to figure it out. If they gotta have a run game. You cannot rely on Trubisky to do everything every game, especially going into the playoffs against stronger defensive teams that are trying to play for a Super Bowl. You got to have a run game. That's my only struggle there with the Bears.
And John, we are going to do. We're going to start round 2 on Friday, and we are also going to do the back half of round 2 on Monday as well, leading up into the draft. So we're going to do a 2-round final mock draft here. But for tonight, we're going to stick to round 1. And I think we need to continue here, Drew, so we can get everybody out of here.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about the Seahawks. I don't want to cut anybody short, but this pick for me is going to be incredibly interesting. Obviously, Russell Wilson is not going to be a choice. The Seahawks now need to really, really win in this draft. They need to hit some home runs out of the draft because they need cheap players when you're paying your quarterback this much money. I have Cleveland Farrell going to this pick. The Clemson defensive end, I think, is going to make an impact for them. Frank Clark has already said he's thinking about holding out off this franchise deal. He was the only pass rusher they had. They need to address that. I've seen guys say they need a safety to replace Earl Thomas. They need secondary players. I agree with those things, but when you look at your only pass rusher talking about, I don't want to play for this team unless you give me a new huge contract, you need to bring another guy in who can get it done. I think Cleveland Farrell is the pick here.
When I look at this, hey, Brian, I'm glad you could join us, man. When I look at this, I think about what the Seahawks did when they were going to Super Bowls and when they were doing deep runs in the playoffs, and they were missing one thing off of the offense that just didn't seem to always match, and that was a tight end. Don't get me wrong, they might look at running back, they might look at wide receiver. They need to put more weapons around Russell Wilson to help him where he's not constantly the only one doing something. But I'm thinking they're going to go tight end, and they're going to go an athleticism tight end, and that's Noah Fant. In my opinion, kind of mirrors Jimmy Graham, and possibly could have a better career than Jimmy Graham because he might be there for a long time with Russell Wilson instead of Jimmy Graham jumping back and forth.
I like that pick a little bit. I don't know. I think they're probably going to lean receiver a little bit more. I think tight end, when you look at it, takes a couple of years to develop in the NFL. But if they do take Noah Fant there, I don't think it's a reach by any means. We've talked about Fant being the only other first-round tight end. Maybe it's a scarcity thing. We talked about that with linebacker. There's only a couple good linebackers in this draft. There's only a couple top-level tight ends, and Fant's that guy. Maybe they do go get him. They need to add weapons to Russell Wilson. You just paid this guy $35 million a year on average for the rest of this contract. Yep. You need to put weapons around him. The offense, I think, is going to take more of a passing vibe here going forward instead of more of a run-heavy group. I think Noah Fant's a good pick for that. I think they might go receiver before tight end, but you never know.
Let's do it.
All right, Drew, let's move on. Let's talk about the Ravens next. I have A.J. Brown because you look at this wide receiving core, Crabtree is gone. John Brown is gone. I've got questions, man. Who's catching the ball on the outside? They still have about 33 tight ends, but they have no wide receivers.
They're going to run the ball.
Well, yeah, but somebody has to be out there. And I think the next
running backs.
The next available wide receiver who's the best guy out there is A.J. Brown, also from Ole Miss. We both had DK Metcalf go in the top end of the first round. I think his successor, A.J. Brown, who really stepped up when he got hurt, is going to be that next guy. He plays inside, he plays outside, he's a big guy as well. He can go up, make athletic catches. I look at this guy, and I'm sitting there saying he's one of those guys that has versatility that the Ravens are going to need, because I don't see them running down the field a ton. They need a guy who's going to be able to make things happen from the slot, who's going to be able to catch short routes from the outside for Lamar Jackson. I think A.J. Brown's the pick, and I think they're lucky that a lot of receivers aren't off the board at this time.
I get it. The Ravens need receivers. There's no doubt about it. But I think they can hold off to the second, third round to still pick up some of these receivers because they don't really need a top-end receiver because guess what? They're not throwing the ball as much as they are running it. What they need to do is focus on that defense. And one of the biggest issues they have is that defensive line. And Christian Wilkins, defensive lineman out of Clemson, is going to fill that hole right away. I mean, it isn't a dire need, but having a rotation at that D end, that D tackle position is huge. And when they can match him up against match him next to Brandon Williams and rotate those two guys out, man, talk about a great defensive line and help restart building that defense.
And Will saying Metcalf is overrated. I think we both kind of agree with you a little bit. I don't know, Drew, do you see him as an overrated player? I definitely do. But we're picking to say what is actually going to happen, and I think people really value him.
In a draft, what's overrated? I mean, realistically, college stats, in a sense, are thrown out the door. He did literally the best out of any receiver out of the combine. So at this point in time, he is the best receiver in this draft because of the combine. Because you can sit there and say, hey, this guy didn't do anything in college, but then he's a pro and he's an all-pro every year. So, I mean, look at Alvin Kamara. He didn't do anything in Tennessee. And
He did. I'll take that back. The second half of the season when he played, everyone was like, this guy's for real.
Okay,
why did Butch Jones let him sit behind Jalen Hurts? Who's terrible. Don't ask me about this because I know about it.
Let's be realistic here. They didn't really do much with him. They kind of held
Well, they
him
were
back.
a bad team, but he was the only reason the team was any good.
My point is at this point in time, all that these...
Do you want to throw this into the Vols podcast? No, we can do that.
No. All I'm trying to do is get a point across that you can't call him overrated just yet. Maybe his stock has risen a little bit because of false advertisement, but when you do that well in the combine, look at all these other ones that done real well. Dontari Poe, Kansas City took him real high. He was great for us, but now where is he? So, I mean, this happens.
No, I agree with you. Shay also says the Saints are going to trade up for Metcalf. I think the Saints have done enough trading up. I mean, they've kind of put themselves behind the ball going up and trading for Marcus Davenport last year. I don't think the Saints make too much of a trade for a wide receiver. I think they're going to take one. I just don't see them moving up all the way to pick 10 for
how
DK
did I
Metcalf.
knock Kamara, man? I was just giving him props about how he didn't do much in college, and now he's a stud in the pros.
He did bounce around, but his senior year in college was pretty exceptional when you look at how bad that Tennessee team was.
He did okay.
He did pretty well. And then there's a reason he was a second-round pick.
They should have played him a lot more.
Oh, they should have, but that's Butch Jones. That's why Butch Jones isn't the coach there anymore. Moving forward, though, Drew, why don't we talk about the Texans next? I have Cody Ford, a guy you already have off the board, going here. I think they're going to take him because, again, we already have Andre Dillard off there. I think they'd rather the pass protector for a guy like Deshaun Watson, who, let's face it, needs some pass protecting, but they need to get better on the offensive line for run blocking as well. Cody Ford's one of those guys that may be able to figure out his footwork, may be able to figure out his hands, and he's already physically talented. He's a huge guy, really good run blocker. I think if he can kind of develop that pass blocking side of his game, he could play left tackle, but I see him more shifting inside to play guard. Doesn't matter. The Texans just need offensive linemen.
Right, there really is no question about what they're going to take here. It's definitely going to be an offensive lineman, but I see them taking Garrett Bradbury, center, out of NC State. I mean, you got to start rebuilding, and sometimes the best way to start rebuilding is right in the middle of center. If he doesn't play center, he can move to guard, but that's what he's been played most of his college career is right in the middle. It doesn't matter. You take offensive linemen, you take the best available. In my draft, in my opinion, it was Bradbury.
All right, Drew. Let's move on and talk about Oakland.
Let's do it.
This is a tough one. I honestly think they can go a lot of directions here, but I have them taking DeAndre Baker at cornerback because, again, in my mock draft, I already have them taking Quinnen Williams, so they already got some help on the defensive line. I also have another pick coming up for them as well. I have them addressing the defense a lot in this mock draft because I think they've kind of made it clear that they've got their wide receivers in Tyrell Williams. They traded for Antonio Brown, so they've addressed the offensive side of the ball. This could be an offensive lineman. I think they need one still. They need a guard. But I think instead they're going for cornerback and they're going to go DeAndre Baker out of Georgia.
Absolutely not. And I completely agree that's what they should do. But this is the Raiders we're talking about. I don't care who's calling the shots. They absolutely love speed. And they're going to have someone named Antonio Brown pushing them for us for this. And it's Marquise Brown, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. They're going to throw another wide receiver at this.
It's actually his cousin. Yeah.
Which exactly I was going to get. He's gonna put another wide receiver in this offense. Derek Carr, if he can't do it with these three receivers in this offense, they're going to let him go next year and go for another quarterback. But I think bringing in someone like this that has this kind of speed to blow up the top of defenses, especially when someone like AB with his type of personality going to be pushing for his cousin to come play with him. Think about that trio of receivers and what Derek Carr could do in this offense. Don't get me wrong, they should pay attention to the defense, and that's what they should do. All three picks should go to defense, but that's not the Raiders.
Well, they have a fourth one at the top end of the second round,
not
too.
the Raiders.
So you could still spend 3 pretty high picks on defense here. I don't necessarily hate that. Again, they get a lot of speed, and they get to figure out whether Derek Carr's the man or not. If you add all these wide receivers and it's still not working for them, they can move on at that point. Shea also said they need to draft a quarterback. I don't think it's going to happen this time. Unless maybe if Kyler Murray falls and they're really feeling chippy, they take him at number 4. I don't think so, though. They paid him too much money. They're handcuffed. They have no choice.
It would create a very huge controversy in that locker room.
You can't even afford to trade him because the signing bonus was so big off that massive contract they just gave him a couple years ago. I think they're tied to Derek Carr. I know there's been rumors about them drafting somebody, but I think they're stuck. I think they're going to have to at least figure out whether Carr's going to be that guy, and I wouldn't hate that pick. I think they're going to go defense. I'm hoping reason rules the day out there in Oakland, and I'm hoping they go get somebody like DeAndre Baker, who, in my opinion, should be a top half first round guy. But there's a lot of top half first round guys in this draft, so I see him falling down to this point.
All right, at number 25, the Eagles. Man, when I looked at this team and I go, man, there's not a lot of holes. Maybe some help on offensive line, but the biggest hole I could see, even though I think it's mostly because of injuries last year, was their secondary. And they're going to take DeAndre Baker, corner out of Georgia.
We just flipped picks because I have Marquise Brown going to the Eagles.
Baker is considered one of the best corners in this draft. He is good at being at run support, and he doesn't lose many of those jump balls. When you're talking about that going against like Amari Cooper and other wide receivers in this division, bringing in someone like DeAndre Baker is huge for the Eagles.
I would love to see one. They did draft Avonte Maddox. I think they believe in him a little bit, but you can never have enough cornerbacks. I say it all the time. They could go safety in this position as well. They could go defense. I would not fault them. They've lost a lot of linebackers as well, but we kind of agree the linebacker's not there for this choice. Yep. I think they're going to go wide receiver. They're going to try to add, after losing Golden Tate, I think they brought him in last year because they said our passing offense isn't where it needs to be. They already addressed the running game by bringing in Jordan Howard. I think they're going to go sign Marquise Brown, get a speedster who's going to be able to play across from Alshon Jeffrey, who's more the possession type, and I think Marquise Brown is the best speedster in this class. He's incredibly fast out of Oklahoma, and he also runs pretty good routes for his speed. I mean, the knock against John Ross was he doesn't run those routes. He's just really, really quick. I see him as slightly slower than John Ross, but runs incredibly better routes, hopefully with better hands, and we're going to be talking about the Eagles re-establishing how good this passing game can be with Carson Wentz.
All right, number 26. The Colts are on the clock. What were they hurting? They were hurting on wide receiver weapons. And I'm going to slaughter this name. Is it N'Keal?
N'Keal Harry. Go ahead.
N'Keal Harry. I nailed it. N'Keal Harry, wide receiver, Arizona State. This guy's a big body wide receiver. 6'2". He's going to give Andrew Luck another big target to throw up. They don't need a speedster, really. They just kind of need a big body receiver. He's obviously kind of shown himself that he likes kind of those bigger targets. Obviously mentioned his tight ends that he likes to throw to. this is someone that's going to help T.Y. Hilton find some more open lanes in the passing game because they're going to have to focus that other side of the field.
I agree, and this is where that kind of hodgepodge of wide receiver comes through because I see this. I think that's a worthy pick.
Yeah.
Again, everyone says I always crap on your picks. I like that pick, Drew. I have a different guy, but I think there's so close, so narrow of a margin between a lot of these receivers in this year's draft. Nobody knows who's going to make it, who isn't. So you just got to take your guy. I think when I look at the Colts, I have Kelvin Harmon from NC State taking this one. He's a big guy. He's a great contested catcher. He's going to be that Dante Moncrief replacement that the Colts have been looking for. They already have the speedster with T.Y. Hilton. They're going to go with the big body. Again, it could be N'Keal Harry, but I think they're going to go a different direction and go Kelvin Harmon instead at NC State. Both big receivers. I think we're in agreement here. This is pretty much what they're going to go for.
It's going to be a big kind of big possession receiver, regardless if it's Harmon or if it's Harry. They're going to be taking a big receiver, or at least they should be.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on and talk about the Raiders' next pick. Obviously, they gave up a lot to get these picks, Drew. Where do you see them taking that's going to make it worth giving up guys like Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper?
At number 27 pick, the Raiders are going to focus on that defensive line once more. They're going to go ahead and draft Dexter Lawrence, defensive lineman out of Clemson. I mean, talk about a big body frame, 6'4", 340 pounds, will help stop the run. He's strong. He's not easily going to be pushed around or moved around. I mean, this is a big body they need to put right in the middle that can help stop the run game.
I wanted to take this pick here, but I already had Quinnen Williams going there. And this is going to shock you. I don't have either one of the Clemson big boys going in the first round. Wow. Both of those D tackles I had slipping. And not because they're not talented, but just because there's so many other needs that guys could go. I actually had them slipping out there. I have them taking Zach Allen, edge rusher out of Boston College. He's big, he's strong. Like you said, they love their measurables, and I think they're getting one of the strongest defensive ends that they're going to be able to pick up here in this draft. They're going to put him next to Quinnen Williams, who's an amazing run stopper, and all of a sudden we're going to be talking about how Oakland went from having one of the worst run defenses in the league to having one of the better ones because their defensive line wins so well on the point of attack. I like Zach Allen. I don't think he's quite a first-round pick. I see him more as a high second-round pick. But in my draft, they needed defensive end. He was the best available at this point, unless you want to roll the dice and take Ja'Kai Polite. I don't think they're going to do that. They're going to take Zach Allen out of Boston College. And hopefully this fixes the defense because I have a cornerback, a great defensive tackle in Quinnen Williams, and now a pretty good defensive end in Zach Allen going to this team. Hopefully that solves things on the defensive side for Oakland.
At number 28, the Chargers are on the clock, and let's talk about a team that doesn't have a lot of holes. They literally have starters all across the board. The only thing I can really think of, get more rotation guys, that defensive line, and talk about a guy that has been raising through because of the combine and his stock has been rising, is Jerry Tillery, defensive lineman out of Notre Dame. This guy's just going to get put into a very talented defensive line. Then he's going to be able to get in there and develop and be very useful for the Chargers in this upcoming season.
He was Notre Dame's best defensive player, in my opinion, and there was also talk that he is just as good at rushing the passer from the defensive interior as Quinnen Williams. I think he's a home run pick that might fall to the bottom end of the first round. I think whatever team winds up with him is going to be lucky. Here's why the Chargers aren't going to take that, because their offensive line is just booty. They are terrible. Phillip Rivers is absolutely terrible. No, he's not. I'm sorry. Phillip Rivers absolutely needs protection. He's getting older, and the offensive line has struggled on the inside for years to come. I think they're going to take Greg Little, offensive tackle from Ole Miss, and they're going to shift him inside to play guard. Their guard game was absolutely terrible last year. They need as many guys on this offensive line to protect their 36 or 37-year-old quarterback in Phillip Rivers, who's not getting any younger and is not a mobile guy. I think they have to address the offensive line with this first pick. I understand the thought process. They need to get better on the defensive interior. Maybe they take Jerry Tillery because I didn't have him going in my draft either. But if you don't take an offensive lineman and Phillip Rivers gets hurt, you're going to be talking about this Super Bowl run that they're on just absolutely falling apart.
Let's remember, he's never missed a game.
Well, I agree, but how long is that going to last when he's 36 years old?
Who knows?
I mean, Drew, it's going to happen eventually.
Guys,
you got to protect him.
I am not ignoring your comments. I am paying attention to him completely, and you guys just comment away because it's not relevant. Shay will always love my turtle, even though he says it's hate. I always read the word love every time he writes it. All right, let's talk about the pick that matters the most in the NFL draft. This is what everyone's been waiting for at the number 29 pick. The Chiefs are on the clock.
And we're done.
The Chiefs are on the clock, and let's not debate this. I mean, their secondary was atrocious. They need a lot of help. Losing all this talent around the defense, that's where they need to focus on. There's a lot of question of what corner, what safety everyone should be taking here at this pick. I'm looking at them going Rock Ya-Sin, corner from Temple. This guy fills a huge need at corner. Rock is a physical corner down the field. He likes to bump into these receivers. He's not afraid of hitting contact. His footwork needs a little bit of help. But guess what Andy Reid's going to help him coach him to do? That's work on his footwork. Regardless, I believe this guy could play either zone or man. You just need to work on his footwork, and this guy's going to be a great corner in the NFL.
I also have him going cornerback. I really wanted to go defensive line here because, again, they've had a massive exodus in Kansas City, but I didn't see the value there anymore. Maybe it's Jerry Tillery, but I feel like Chris Jones is going to solidify that inside. I wanted to get an edge rusher. I didn't see that guy that's worth it for this pick, so I went cornerback instead. I think it was their biggest weakness last year, and I had a different guy going off the board here, Amani Oruwariye. I got that right. That was pretty good. From Penn State, I think he's great in transition. He's one of those guys that's really good in man and zone coverage. He's got good ball skills, so he's good at generating turnovers, which the Chiefs thrive on. I mean, that was pretty much the defensive plan last year, is just wait for them to make a couple mistakes and outshoot them. So I see Oruwariye, I messed it up that time, being their pick here because I believe he is the fourth best cornerback in this draft. I see him as a little bit more talented than some of these other guys on the board, and I think he can make more turnovers than some of these other guys on the board, so that's why I have them taking him at pick number 28.
Regardless, we both agree that secondary is a must-need at pick 29.
Absolutely. Let's move forward, though. The Packers have another pick that they acquired from the Saints last year in the pick that wound up getting the Saints, Marcus Davenport here. The Packers have a lot of needs as well. Where do you see them going with pick number 2? Because I, at the very least, had them taking a wide receiver in DK Metcalf being the first one off the board last time. So I'm going to go a different direction this time. We're going to start with your pick, though.
They're going to focus on that offensive side of the ball. And I get it. Aaron Jones had a great season last year. I'll say a decent year. I mean, he didn't go out there and rewrite the record books. But guess what? When he came off the field, there was nothing going on in that running game at all. And Aaron Rodgers is obviously, he needs help. Is it a wide receiver? They took all those wide receivers last year. It'd be kind of ridiculous for them to take another wide receiver, but I get it. You focus on what you're best at. But why not bring in another running back, and especially considered the best running back out of this draft, and that's Josh Jacobs, running back Alabama. He's getting compared a lot to Alvin Kamara. So if he can do some of that scat back stuff, and he can create a lot of that 1-2 punch with Jones, I mean, you're talking about a crazy offense if one of these wide receivers they took last year or they take later on in this draft, and they could have a great offense back again.
Drew, you had me all the way up to this point, man. I was loving your draft, but let me tell you, I think this pick is absolutely terrible. And it's nothing against you. I just don't think Josh Jacobs is the guy.
Dude,
and maybe they take a running back here, but they have Jamal Williams, who they just spent a late-round pick on, which you said at wide receiver, that's no big deal. They just took a bunch of these guys. They took Aaron Jones. They took Jamal Williams in the late rounds. I don't think they're going to give up on either one of those guys, especially because I think Aaron Jones is one of the better running backs in the NFL. He just needs a better offensive line for him. I'm not going that direction myself. I don't love Josh Jacobs. I know everybody's sitting there saying he's the number one running back in this class, but come on, the guy played like 30% of the snaps at Alabama this year. And you're going to tell me he's a first-round pick? I don't know, Drew.
He's considered top 10
Defend
talent.
your pick, man. Defend your pick.
I'm telling you right now, he's getting compared to one of the best scat backs in the NFL. He's considered, his talent is top 10 in this draft. If running backs weren't so literally dime a dozen, this guy would be a first top 10 picks. But the problem is you don't have to do that anymore. But the thing is, the Packers' run game wasn't great all year long. You can sit there and talk Aaron Jones all to me as you want, but was he a Pro Bowler? Oh, no, he was not.
And guess what? You need to block for him. So that's why you go either take an offensive lineman or you take a defensive linebacker. No.
Make defenders miss.
And he did at a high rate last year. But the problem was there were multiple defenders because nobody could keep anyone off this guy. I think Aaron Jones is going to be just fine. Jamal Williams is a good number 2.
Ask Aaron Rodgers.
Maybe they go for the scat back, but they're not going to go replace Ty Montgomery with a first-round pick.
How well he's going to get to DK Metcalf with all those people around him.
That's why they need an offensive lineman, Drew. Thank you.
Right, which they took in my draft and their first pick.
Ask how much pass blocking Josh Jacobs is going to do for Aaron Rodgers. 0. That's why he's not going to be on the field. But let me tell you this, Drew. Look, I don't hate this pick if it's the second or third round, okay? I just hate this pick when they have
Jeremy, what's going on,
so
man?
many
Comment away. We'll reach out for you, man.
Glad to see you, too. And Jimmy agrees with me here. He says there's no way they're taking a running back that early for the Packers. Look, they have too many other needs. I agree with you. He would help the team, but they have too many other needs. That's why they're taking Jerry Tillery in my draft. They're going to shore up this defensive line. They already brought in the 2 Smiths to play outside. They already have one good defensive tackle. They're going to go put another one in there with Jerry Tillery, who's also very coincidentally good at rushing the passer, which the Packers are going to need to do. I see them taking another defensive lineman and upgrading this defensive line massively in this offseason because that was their problem last year, right? They couldn't play any defense.
Right, no, but they've done a lot of free agency moves. Jimmy is saying no running back that early for the Pac-Man. Hey, you're with Jake there.
I just read that, but that's okay.
I'm just saying I see a little bit different. I don't listen to what he says. I ignored him after he told me that my draft
Will
was
saying
terrible.
the hate is strong with me right now. It absolutely is because I hate this pick.
I don't even know Jake's talking right now because as soon as he told me my draft is terrible, I quit listening to him.
I didn't say your draft is terrible. I
No,
said
you
pick
did.
30 is terrible. Up until now, you had me. I was like, these are some good picks. But this one, Drew, you're off in left field. If they take it, I'll give you a beer bet. I'll buy you a rack of beer, man. I'll buy you a 24-pack if they take it. Josh Jacobs at 30.
You can fill my kegerator up.
I will. If they take him at 30, I will absolutely fill up your kegerator. What do I get if they don't?
A high five.
Okay. I'll take it. Moving forward, though, let's talk about the Rams at 31 here, Drew. Because this, to me, is an interesting choice. Obviously, LaMarcus Joyner has departed. They signed Eric Weddle to try to replace him. Eric Weddle's 34 years old, though. And that's why I have them taking Nasir Adderley, safety out of Delaware.
And I like that pick. There's no doubt about it. But real quick, Brian says they will definitely beast up that D. It was terrible last year. I'm with you, man, but I think they did it, a lot of it in free agency. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're going to focus a little bit on this defense, but there wasn't a lot of offensive power in free agency, so they might find it through the draft, which you obviously agree with your first pick, and I took an offensive lineman in mine, and I can't remember who it was now, but I know it's an offensive lineman. Jimmy says we need to get to the quarterback, plain and simple. And
I'm right there with you, Jerry. I think Jerry Tillery, if he falls this far in the draft, the way he rushes from the inside, it's uncanny. I mean, usually defensive tackles are not known for getting after the passer. Jerry Tillery can do it. Quentin Williams can do it. There are a couple other guys who are good at it, but not as good as those two guys. I think if they get him at pick 30, that's going to be the steal of this draft. And we're going to be talking about them going from a terrible defensive line to one of the better ones. Again, I would love this to be middle linebacker as well, but there's not the value there, so I think they're going to go a different direction. I think you kind of agree with me there. They're going to go take either a defensive line player. I think this could be a skill position. They could flip it, take the defensive line first in my draft, but I had them taking a wide receiver, helping Aaron Rodgers out, helping Devontae Adams get more space by putting another threat on the field. Drew's going a little bit different direction, man. You're allowed to. I'm
You're
joking a
my
little bit.
kegerator, that's all I know.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
I'm about to get a high five. But let's go
I like
back to
Adderley. I like that pick in Adderley, but I think they're going to focus a little bit different because what the Rams have and what they need to do at pick 31 is they need to focus on their offensive linemen. They had the oldest offensive line in the NFL last year, and they stayed healthy. That's great, but guess what? Some of these guys are going to start going away.
Well, Saffold did already at guard, so I agree. The interior would be huge.
You have to start looking somewhere else, and I think they're going to take Dalton Reisner, offensive lineman out of Kansas State. I just think someone like that will fit into your offensive line. You can get some of the older guys to sit there and help coach him through the way. There's a lot of dings on the guy, but every offensive lineman has something quote-unquote wrong with them. Bring them in. Go ahead and start your run for the Super Bowl again.
And I love Dalton Reisner. This is a great pick. I'm back on the Drew train for this mock draft because I love this pick as well. I think they're going to go defense first. I think Nasir Adderley, a guy like this falling all the way to 31, I think he's a top. Again, this is another guy that could be a top 15 in a different year. Yeah. He's an incredibly talented safety. He's a true free safety. I think the Rams are going to shift to more of a two-high set with Eric Weddle and Adderley that they bring in here with this first pick, and we're going to see them try to rely on the defensive line to get more pressure this season because I think that's kind of where they were last year. I think when you look at this, they don't have the defensive end at this point that's worth pick 31. They're going to take best available. They could be either one of those guys.
Absolutely.
I definitely could see it being Reisner as well.
And we're going to switch picks here. We're going to swap them because at number 32, I take Adderley for the Patriots. But I'm going to tell you right now, it would surprise the heck out of me if they don't trade this pick away. I can fully believe that this is going to be traded away. Rarely do the Patriots pick wherever they're supposed to be, but we didn't do trades during our draft. But let's be realistic here. Talk about another part of a team that's aging, and that's their secondary in the Patriots. Chung signed another 1 year. You got the McCourties. You do have Gilmore, but he's the only piece that's going to be there for a little bit. You bring in Adderley there, he could fit into that secondary and learn under one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. And Belichick, this guy would be great. Don't get me wrong, tight end, wide receiver could be picked here, but I think they need to focus on their defense.
And that was the direction I had to go. I agree with you. They are getting older in the secondary. I would like this pick if they got it, but I think everybody knows Gronk's retired. Pretty much the only weapon they have now is Julian Edelman. They have to address wide receiver or pass catcher. I don't see it being Noah Fant. I thought about it here really that could have been the pick, but then I sat there and looked at it and I said, it's probably going to be Andy Isabella, a guy who loves playing from the slot. He's very small, very fast, can make an impact on the inside like the Patriots like to do, but he's also played on the outside at UMass. He's able to run deep routes, which the Patriots have been missing, a guy that can go down the field for a long time. I think you're going to add, Josh Gordon did a little bit of that this year, but I don't think you can rely on Josh Gordon coming back next year.
Don't think he's coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've said that before, right?
He's not coming back.
The guy has 9 lives in the NFL. But they need a guy who can play both outside and inside. I think Andy Isabella from UMass is that receiver to do it. Again, he's a slot dominator. He's a guy who's going to do his best work from the slot, but he's fast enough. He's very agile on the outside, and he can run deep routes, which they've been missing. I think the Patriots need to address pass catcher at some point. I thought about Fant, but I'm going to go Andy Isabella instead.
I don't dislike that pick one bit. Brian says...
Go ahead.
Nope, it's yours.
Brian said Demaryius Thomas has just signed with the Patriots, but again, when you look at what he did for Houston last year, when you look at the way he looked at the Broncos, I think this is a roll the dice and see what happens when they sign him. I don't think they're going to count on Demaryius Thomas really making too much of an impact for him. This is going to be one of those, it's a reclamation project. Maybe he turns into a great player. Maybe he turns into a contributor that can put up 600 to 800 yards, but I don't think they expect him to be the guy that he was when he was going to the playoffs and playing with Peyton Manning.
Yeah,
so
there's no doubt
they still
about it.
need help at wide receiver. I don't think you can sit there and
This
say
is a typical
Demaryius
Patriot
Thomas
move.
is going to solve it. Right.
This is a typical Patriot move. They like to sign veteran wide receivers. They like to have someone that knows what it is to be in an NFL locker room, and they're probably going to bring someone else in and try to develop him around him. Do they expect a lot of them? No, not really. That's just kind of what happens. And if they do get any kind of stat or any kind of success from him, they're going to be excited about it, but I don't think it's going to be possibly... I highly doubt he's going to have plays that's in the playbook every game in and game out, that's directed towards him, unless somehow he goes off, which I don't think he has that anymore.
And everyone wants to draw the Josh Gordon comparison. The difference is Josh Gordon was 27 or 28 years old. You're getting a 32-year-old Demaryius Thomas who has not looked himself the past couple years. Look, they've revitalized careers before. I just don't see it happening, Brian. I think they need many, many more weapons here in New England. I think they might take 2 or 3 before this draft is over.
Right.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Are there any other comments you want to get to here, Drew?
No.
Jimmy says the Patriots receivers contribute every single year. It doesn't matter who it is. I agree, but I think they kind of realized last year when they had to lean more on those running backs instead that they didn't have it at wide receiver, especially with Edelman kind of out on suspension. And Gronk now gone. I think they realized that they need to start adding at least a few weapons if it's going to work with Tom Brady. Michael Mitchell's gone as well. He's retired. They're getting a lot thinner at wide receiver. I think they need to address it early. They need to get a guy like Andy Isabella this early.
Yeah, no, I think that they will grab a wide receiver at some point.
All right, guys. Well, as always, we appreciate all the comments. We appreciate all the love. We even appreciate the hate, guys. It was fun. I saw some of the jokes. I wasn't going to read them. I saw them. Nice try. Maybe next time.
I absolutely love it. I think it's all great. Shay, I know every time you say hate or dislike, you always mean love and like. But, guys, I just want to thank you so much for all the comments, likes, the shares. It means the world to us, guys. We appreciate it. That's why we do it day in and day out with you. And I just want to give special thanks to all you guys that did comments. And if I miss you, I'm so sorry. But Facebook kind of sucks every now and then. But real quick, Steve, Will, Michael, David, Nate, Matthew, Rich, Adam, Chris, Shay, Eddie, Charo, JP, Bees, Jimmy, John, Jeremy, Brian, and Brian. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. And my special thanks, I just want to sit there and highlight Jeremy. Thank you for sharing. It says here that you did. I'm not sure if everybody else did. I'm not sure if you didn't. Thank you guys for the shares because it helps us beat Facebook's algorithm, which doesn't put all our content out there. So you're helping us, and we absolutely appreciate that. We appreciate the chance to get there, to come here and come talk sports with you guys. So for Sports Around the Bar, thank you again for all the love, all the shares, all the comments. I'm Jake, your bartender. This is Drew, and we will see you on Friday to talk about the second round, at least the first half of it, and the NBA playoffs.
Yep. See ya.